Welcome back. Now, education activists are concerned about the lack of additional funding for the basic education sector. On Thursday, Finance Minister Tito Mboweni tabled his supplementary budget speech, and Minister Mboweni announced a 2.1 billion rand cut in the sector's budget. Now, Equal Education's Jane Bourneman unpacks this with me, and she joins us now. Jane, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, what have you found particularly problematic with the minister's supplementary budget, when it comes to the education sector?
Well, we are obviously, in general, very, very concerned by the fact that no additional funding, well, not only that no additional funding has been given, but also that 2.1 billion has been cut overall from the education budget, as you mentioned. We are particularly concerned with the fact that the majority of the cuts come from infrastructure. There's a 1.7 billion overall cut from infrastructure and a 4.4 reprioritization. Now, just quickly, what that means is that they are taking funds that were allocated within the infrastructure grants and reprioritizing them to sanitation measures. So that is providing what is often temporary solutions to more sort of systemic long-term issues of sanitation. So we are concerned that the government is essentially prioritizing sort of temporary measures and taking away funding that could actually provide systemic relief for issues of lack of sanitation, access to water, access to electricity, and unsafe school infrastructure.
Now, it seems that the funding for, basic education in South Africa had been diminishing already, this before COVID-19. What outlook then does it give, regarding basic education or even a sector and industry as a whole pre and during the pandemic?
Well, we feel that a budget reflects government's priorities, and we are extremely disheartened by the fact the government seems to be consistently over the years deprioritizing education and specifically basic education. You see that spending per learner has decreased over the last 5 years. That means that less money is being spent on each one of our learners every year. That obviously is a huge, huge issue for us. The fact that government has said that it is advocating for universal, acceptable and equal education, but doesn't reflect this commitment in the actual budget is really disappointing and disingenuous for us.
And you raise these concerns, Jane, because there are schools that are very much disadvantaged. There are poor schools that absolutely depend on these funds.
Yes. And particularly, COVID-19 has created unique and absolutely devastating effects on the education system. Many of the effects of the inequalities of our education system are felt by poor communities, specifically in rural areas. COVID-19 has obviously exacerbated many of the difficulties and anxieties that these learners and their parents and the teachers face. We're deeply concerned with this budget as we feel that it doesn't support these learners and the new challenges that they face, including food insecurity due to families losing work, increased health insecurity due to the spread of COVID-19. So we are extremely worried that, once again, the burden is going to be placed on the poorest learners and the poorest families and the poorest communities.
Now, I have had extensive conversation with Equal Education when it comes to the National School Nutrition Program. Have you received your answer from the minister with regards to whether budget would finally be allocated to this program?
So we have written twice to the Minister of Education and we haven't received any response. However, the budget does state that no additional funding is being provided to the feeding scheme. And in addition, 50 million within the budget is being reprioritized for sanitation issues. Now, obviously, this is necessary because, for example, they have to ensure that the cooking areas or meal distributions are safe and healthy. However, this 50 million takes away from the funding of the actual food and paying food vendors, which will have implications for how widely the program is able to feed learners. So we are concerned that this program is not experiencing any additional funding, obviously in a time when food insecurity for many, many communities is increasing.
Well, that's where we'll have to leave it, but thank you so much for highlighting some of these issues. That's Jane Boneman from Equal Education.